Hey everyone, GameCube with Fries here with a new collection video. I decided recently that I would do a updated look at my entire game collection across all my platforms. So over the next couple weeks I'll be doing a lot of videos like this where I kind of take an updated, refreshed look at all my different game libraries, and I figured I'd start with my retro game collection, which is not very large at this point in time, especially not for this particular platform. This is my NES collection, so get started with Batman, the video game, developed by Sunsoft. They did a lot of different games during the NES era. This is a fantastic sort of action platformer. It plays a bit like Ninja Gaiden, but it feels a lot. The controls feel a lot weightier. There's a few little like beat 'em up elements, and it's really interesting. It's a very challenging game, though. The level design and enemy placement gets really unforgiving really quickly. Still, it's not that expensive. You can pick this up for like I think I paid like $4 or $5 for my copy. Really, really solid game, especially considering how garbage a lot of licensed games on the NES were, and a lot of other platforms for that matter. Another Sunsoft game, Blaster Master. This is a terrific game. It mixes a lot of different things together. It's an action game. It's a side-scrolling action game with some light Metroid elements. You control this little hovercraft tank ship, and you go and explore these levels. And you go into the goal is to find the correct dungeon, the dungeon that holds the boss. And the cool thing is, when you go into these dungeons, it actually shifts into kind of a top-down Legend of Zelda perspective, where you're like shooting the enemies, like you're in like a little space suit. You're like outside of the tank. You actually directly control the pilot. It really mixes the gameplay up, and it's a really terrific game. Again, like Batman, it is a very tough game. The bosses get really difficult really fast. I haven't managed to pass the crab boss. It's pretty nuts. But this is definitely worth picking up. Again, it's pretty affordable. Only costs a couple bucks. I think it's also pretty cheap complete in box. So if you're into like complete collecting, then definitely look into that. Contra, classic arcade shooter from Konami. This is like one of the, as far as I know, one of the original like side-scrolling run-and-gun games. Very, very terrific, fast-paced game. Very challenging. This is the only Contra game I've played. I hear the other ones get even tougher. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what the sequels are all about whenever I get around to that. But this is definitely worth picking up. It's not ridiculously expensive, but compared to like the Sunsoft games I just went over, it isn't exactly cheap. I think it actually has gone up. I bought this a couple years ago. Really, really solid action game. Donkey Kong Classics, which is a sort of 2-in-1 compilation cart, which contains the original Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. And this actually was one of a couple of NES games that my grandmother gave me from back when she had hers. She just had a couple extra games floating around, weren't really getting used, so she just passed them off to me. And this is alright, you know. I've never really been huge into the old arcade Donkey Kong games, but you know, this is fun every once in a while. If you're in the mood to play something, you know, real quick that'll last you a couple minutes, it's not bad. But I wouldn't say go out of your way to get it. It's not really a must-own. Dragon Warrior, classic JRPG for the NES. This game is pretty good. It's a neat time capsule game, but it does get very grindy, like even compared to a lot of other RPGs from the time, and RPGs that would follow, like the Final Fantasy series and whatever. This game gets you'll have to spend hours and hours just leveling yourself up and acquiring gold to get new gear. it's a really interesting time capsule game, and it is pretty fun to play, just because of its simplicity. It is much more simplistic than a lot of other JRPGs, even from this time period, like the original Final Fantasy. This is much more simplistic, but it's definitely a lot of fun to play, and it's pretty affordable, so if you're a fan of old-school RPGs, this is definitely worth picking up. I do want to check out the sequels, but they've gotten a bit expensive for my tastes. Kid Icarus. This one, generally, people seem to be pretty mixed about this. It's kind of a love it or hate it kind of game, because it's extremely challenging. The levels go on forever. You know, it just relentlessly throws enemies and pitfalls at you. It has a weird kind of level up system to it, where your score is kind of experience at the same time. It's a very interesting game, and I enjoy it a lot, but it does get really frustrating. Like, you have to... It's hard to gauge how close you are to leveling up, because you can't view your score. You either can't view your score till the end of the level, or you can see it on screen, but it doesn't tally up until the end of the level. Because at the end of each level, it'll like rack up all your points. And there are also upgrades you can find hidden throughout these doors in each level. It's some of them you need to like endure like a trial, like it throws a bunch of enemies at you. It's just a very relentless game, but it's really cool though. I'd say check it out if you're in the mood for a good challenge. We have Ninja Gaiden, a really, really great sort of fast-paced action platformer from the time. Really hard, definitely a very challenging game. The Ninja Gaiden series is known for its challenge. Even the modern games on like the Xbox and PS3, you know, it's very infamously challenging. This one, I wouldn't say this is the hardest one, but it's very hard. And here is Ninja Gaiden 2, the Dark Sword of Chaos. This one, I don't dig this quite as much as Ninja Gaiden 1. Ninja Gaiden 1 is hard and very relentless. Kind of like other games like, I don't know, Kid Icarus or Batman, where it's just constantly throwing shit at you. This one, I don't know. It has that, but it also... The difficulty feels kind of artificial in spots, because there's a lot of, like, level gimmicks to each level. Like, there's a wind level where you have to wait until the wind changes direction to make your jump, or... I know there's an ice level that's really obnoxious. It's been a while since I've really dug into this game, but I do remember it being really... Like, it's good, but not really as memorable or as fun as the first game, mostly because of the sort of gimmicky level design. And lastly, Ninja Gaiden 3, The Ancient Ship of Doom. This one is interesting. I feel like I like it better than Ninja Gaiden 2, but I still don't quite like it as much as the first game, because the game itself does feel more well-designed, but at the same time the US version suffers from a lot of problems. Like, for some reason, when they brought it over here, they decided to ramp up the difficulty and limit the amount of times you could continue. So it basically becomes harder just because, you know, you get killed faster and you can't continue indefinitely. This one I can't really recommend as much as the other two, just because it is very hard, and it's also kind of expensive compared to the other two. I actually paid a lot more for this than I paid for either of the first two Ninja Gaiden games. So, I don't know. Take that for what you will. But anyway, that was my pretty small NES collection. I'm sure I'll be updating it plenty in the future. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.